Welcome everybody to the Red G Fox channel. Thank you for everyone that has joined us today. Before you take off and you're like, hey, this is not an episode that I wanted to click on. Yes, you will get clips, you will get fun facts, and you're gonna have a great time with others in our community in the comment section that just love Sanford and Son, and that's what this channel is all about. So if you found it by accident, you didn't make a mistake, join us, hit the like button if you like the video. If you don't hit the like button. And if you enjoy anything, subscribe, join our community we're getting bigger each month, and I love it, and I welcome you with open arms. So anyways, I've wasted enough time. Today, we finally get sangria. Yeah. Yes, if you see a lot of props in the background, they all have to do with Sanford and Son, and this one has been in the background for a while. And unless you have seen the video before where I talk about it, this is sangria, and it is taken from today's episode, Pops and Pals, where they go to their favorite Mexican restaurant and try sangria. And we know what's going to happen. We'll cover it, including having a clip on it. So let me put this back right up here. Usually it goes right here, but today we'll have it set down here. So, Pops and Pals. This is an episode that I truly love because I am a gigantic fan. If you're part of this channel, this community, or ever watched any of my previous videos, you know my stance on Julio. I've always said he's the best neighbor you could want, and he is so polite and so kind. And so I have a neighbor across the street, and he is so much reminds me of Julio. Acts just like him. I think he's an amazing neighbor, always willing to lend a hand. I'm changing a tire, he comes out. I have a small jack, he's got a better jack. He needs me to do a favor, I go to him. Great neighbor, and that's totally reminds me, same culture as Julio. So it's not a coincidence that Julio is like this because it's based on reality. I've talked too much about it. Let's get to the show. So Pops and Pals, IMDb 7.5 rating. Anything, like I said, 7.5 and up, man, that is a top-notch episode. To me personally, it's probably in my top 35. Like, when it's on, I'm watching it. You know, I'm not going to go, oh, you know, click it or go, you know what, nah, let's look for a different one. I will stay on this one, and it's really good. Summary. Let's get to the quick summary. This is what it basically is. Lamont is spending too much time with Julio. Fred is disappointed. You know, he's like, hey, you know what? I'm your friend. Stop hanging out with him. Hang out with Rollo or me. And he wants to try to be a friend, not so much a dad. Hangs out with them. We talked about they go to the Mexican restaurant. Then he wants to do other things with them, and he's jealous. In the end, he's jealous and just wants his son around. So that's it, and he does all his little schemes, which are absolutely hysterical. Let's look at one right here.
Come right in.
It's good to see you again, Mr. Sanford.
Yeah, you did. Ooh.
Sorry about those cold hands. Cold hands, warm chapel.
Oh, welcome back, Nelson B. Davis of the Funeral Home. That's what I'm saying. I love these little parts. Now, Nelson B. Davis did not make our one and done appearance tournament, which we just wrapped up. Go click it if you've never seen it, where we even cover our top 20 one and done guys and women. There was a bunch of women represented. But Nelson B. Davis, because he was only in 2 episodes, he could not be in that. And this is his second and final appearance in Sanford and Son history. Thank you, Nelson B. Davis. Cold hands, warm chapel. But he's in this, so, I mean, just things like that. You take a great episode and you make it that much better. So, fun facts. Only one today. This is the only time in show history, right? We've seen it probably about 4 times, possibly. Chico is on the show. This is the only time in Sanford and Son history where Fred does not freak out and have a heart attack or scream to get the goat out of here. He actually welcomes Chico with open arms and even says, hey, you want to watch Wild Kingdom with me? As Chico's chomping away on the popcorn. That shows how desperate Fred at that stage was and how upset he was. That shows a lot, that he's like, hey man, I'll take any companionship I get. I don't got a dog. I don't got a cat. I'll take Chico for right now. That's how low on the spectrum Fred was when it came to needing friendship, upset about Lamont. So that is our fun fact for the episode. Familiar faces, we just have one, and that is none other than Joaquin Garay. I don't know much. When I recognize him, all I know him is from Sanford & Son, but he did go in 14 other shows, movies. Let's cover a few of them. The Disney Three Caballeros, he was one of the voices in that one, so he was in that Disney movie. He was in Mannix, that television show. The I Love Lucy Comedy Hour, or I think it was just the Lucy Comedy Hour. A little different, but Lucy Comedy Hour. The movie For Whom the Bell Tolls. So he did a few things, but 14 credits overall. So he did not have this massive career. He's probably one of the smallest We've only covered a few other people that had less than 10, like single digits. but at 14 credits or so in what we covered, not very big, but that's it. We've already covered Nelson B. Davis and Gregory Sierra in other episodes, so if you want to see that, you have to scroll back to our old stuff. That's it for familiar faces and fun facts. Let's get to the breakdown.
Negro, it's a very common thing. It's a friendly way of talking to each other in Spanish. What do we call ourselves?
You look like no Negro to me.
We start out right away and you're seeing Lamont play hoops one-on-one with Julio, and I love that part where he's calling the play-by-play, and he dunks it. It's probably about an 8-foot rim, maybe 7, but he dunks it pretty well, and he's I love watching Lamont. He's like, yeah, and then he's doing the basketball, and he's all, basketball's my people's game, Julio. He's all, your people? What do you mean your people? And then he does the dribble, and he's all, because we cool. And Lamont pulls it off, man. He does, everything he says is true when you look at it from that perspective. And then Julio's like, hey, man, my people, we play ball too. And he said, yeah, and then he names a player, and he's like, hey, man, that's a baseball player. He's not even talking about basketball. But Julio's answer is the best because it's true. He's all, yeah, but it's harder. It's a smaller ball. And he's so true, man. Everyone says the hardest thing to do in sports is hit a baseball, and you got to give it to him. That's harder than dunking it or throwing in the hoop. So they're having a good time, and I don't get this. It's so funny when you see Fred. They cut to Fred, and he's yelling outside at the top of his lungs, hey, you two, you quit it. I mean, he looks like a grouchy old man yelling at some 8-year-old kids playing in the front yard. He's like, get off my lawn, man, right? He's not loving it. And I always crack up. I'm like, come on. Your son is almost 30. He's playing with a dude who's probably in his 30s. Will you go find something to do? He comes outside and he starts ripping into it. And once again, he's like, I'm sorry I let you two build and put that hoop. Lamont's an adult. He can build and put whatever he wants. But he's like, I'm sorry I agreed to let you two put this hoop up. And he's like, you're kicking dirt, ruining all this, my empire, my beautiful property, which is so comical. Even Lamont calls him on it. He's like, are you kidding me? But the fact that he sits there and starts flipping out, and then he's mean to Julio, and he's like, hey, why don't you go back where you came from? And Lamont's like, here we go again. And it's true. And this is why I love Julio. In the past, when he's done things, right? Like when he's talking about his sister, he said, maybe she's not pretty enough for you. Maybe because she's Puerto Rican. Si, senor. And Julio gets pissed. And then he gets mad when he refuses a gift. Julio at this stage has learned, you know what? Fred is just and he even calls him on it. And don't play basketball. You ruin. And he starts mimicking Fred, and he's like, you basically act like this big grouch. He's all, but I know what's on the inside. And Fred's like, you want to know what's on the inside? Let's look at that clip.
Outside, you might be rough and mean, but I know what is inside.
You know what's inside? The baseball bat. You want to see it?
The baseball by me.
He's got the bat. He's like, you come on in. I'll show you what's on the inside. And then Julio, I love Julio's response. He's like, yeah, you know, he at this stage, this is why I love him. He's moved off. He's like, Fred, you're a nice guy. But even when he calls him out and says, hey, go, he's a man. I'm from America. I can live in any of the 50 states I want. And Fred's all, why don't you try Alaska? That's a state. So it's a good back and forth burn. But Julio doesn't take the bait. He totally plays into the nice guy role that he is. And that's why I've always said I personally love Julio, and I wish he never had to leave the show. Regardless if we wouldn't have got the Sanford arms. Hey, take Sanford arms and put it at the other neighbor, whoever the heck that is. We only see this side neighbor. So that's it. They go inside, and now they're talking about it. And Lamont is basically calling him on it like, hey, you're lucky, Julio. And he's right, because Julio could probably kick some butt. But he's like, you're lucky that Julio is good people, because everything you do is always so bigotry towards him and just hateful. And then of all the nerve, right? He goes, man, why don't you have other friends? Hang out with your other friends. And he's all, how about Rollo?
Yeah, some of your other friends. You got other friends?
Like who, for instance?
Like Rollo.
Rollo? You hate Rollo.
I don't hate Rollo. I can't stand him, but I don't hate him.
I love that he does that. He's like, okay, who besides Rollo can you stand from his friends, right? He doesn't like, we don't see a lot of them. We know he doesn't like Achu. We know he didn't like really anyone from his group in season 4, including Rollo. He's always got some comment. But he does say, hey, I don't hate Rollo, right? I just can't stand him. When you hate him, you want to touch him repeatedly. He wants to hit Julio. So it's weird that he would hate Julio so much when he even openly said Julio's a good person in the past. So it's weird that he has such a hatred for Julio. And then they start talking, and this is where Fred's like, hey, I could be your friend. And he's like, man, you're an old man. I go out with chicks. And Fred's like, I'll go out with chicks if you give me some. So it's a great conversation. This is what I'm saying. Other episodes have scenes like this, right? This is always the heart of Sanford and Son, is Fred and Lamont talking and being in those real life conversations that we can all relate to, whether you're the son, whether you're the father, whether you're the uncle or the mom, whatever the case may be, the daughter, we can all relate to this kind of conversation. And it's real. And that's what I think at the heart of it, as we've had commenters on here before mention, it's the core, it's the family, it's the realistic, it's the realism that this is relatable. This is not some cornball comedy where it's all fake, or it's something where none of us can feel like, hey, we know what that's like. So they're going back and forth about hanging out, and then Fred paints a beautiful story about, hey, we can get some bologna sandwiches with some onions and mayonnaise. And I've had bologna sandwich with mayonnaise. I used to love that when I was a kid. I haven't had it in years. But I never had it with onions. It sounds good. But he's like, get that, some beer. We'd be burping in the wind and fishing taking the cruise off to, what is it? Santa Ana, maybe Santa Cruz, something like that. But he goes on the ship and he's like, and then get some all day burping in the wind and fishing. And then you get those fish and you lay them down with some corn mash. Is it cornmeal, corn mash? He said, fry them up. He said, that's a good day. And it does. It sounds like a fun time with friend or family. And Lamont even admits, Lamont's like, yeah, you know what, Dad, you're right. You're right. That does sound fun. And he's like, well, let's do it. But Lamont can't this weekend because he's going to Tijuana with Julio. Let's look at this one.
Going where? Tijuana, you know, Mexico. Going down there with a Spanish-speaking person, I'm really going to get around.
Yeah, you gonna get around, especially if you drink the water.
So he's going to Tijuana. He's excited. Fred is not. And you get it. Remember, he's like, hey, it does make sense. I'm going to go. He's just going for a weekend. And Fred has to pull the old baby attitude, and he's mad. Then Julio comes back, and they're ready to go. And Fred's like, you're taking off already? He's like, no. And this is my favorite part of the episode. Comment below if this is your favorite part, or is it later on with Nelson B. Davis. But when he's like, hey, we're going out to eat. And Fred's like, what? You know I got stuff. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dad. And he's like, Pop, I got to go out. And he's like, no, you shouldn't eat alone. And Julio, being the nice neighbor, come with us. And Lamont's like, no. And he's like, yeah, this will be a good chance for me and your father to become friends. You would think so, but Fred's going to always find a way to blow it. And then he comes over and he's like, oh, let me get a case of something. He's like, oh, no, they got drinks there. He said, nah, and he gets the Pepto-Bismol. So he's got the Pepto-Bismol, and Lamont gives him the look. He's like, "What I told you it's going to be like this." And Julio's just like, "All right, let's give it a try." So we're at the restaurant. They got the chips and salsa. It looks like a real they do a good job, I think, with the setting this up, because it looks like a real Mexican restaurant. When I'm there, I was like, man, I want to sit down and let me get some. They never take the chips. I'm like, give me those chips, eat them, right? We go to my family loves Mexican food. We go to Taco Surf out here in SoCal all the time. So it reminds me of that. So as they're there, he's looking at it, and when the guy comes to order, and Fred says his famous meal,
black-eyed peas, and mustard greens,
ham hocks, mustard greens, all the things that he loves. And he's like, no, you can't get. You're not gonna get soul food here. We're here for Mexican food, and he says, I'll take care of it. So Julio's ordering. Fred's not loving it, but every time Fred does something that, to me, remember, it's not our dad. We're not with it. But Lamont is so quick fused. The minute Fred does something he doesn't like, he's all, that's it, I'm leaving. And then Julio goes to order, I think it's like queso, el queso, something, where it's pickled raw fish. And Fred's like, that's it, bye. And he gets up. Julio stops him because he wants to, but Lamont tries to stop him. I'm like, wait a minute, you just said, and then watch the following line. He says, if you don't like it, you can get up and leave. After you just... So Lamont's all over the place. He's always like, don't leave, get up and leave. And he does the same thing in Lamont Goes African, where he can't even make up his own mind with his father. So he sits down, they're going to get it, and then he comes over and he comes to get him a drink. And that's when he's like, a nice pitcher of sangria. And when he comes over, he's all, hey, negro. He goes... We gotta look at that clip.
Negro, it's a very common thing. It's a friendly way of talking to each other in Spanish. What do we call ourselves?
You look like no Negro to me.
Then he says that, you don't look like no negro to me. But then I love when he gets the drink and he tries it. At least he's willing to try it, right? We've seen that even when he's with the Japanese, when they're trying to buy his home, and he tries the eyeballs. Remember, he thinks they're grapes. But at least he's trying things. So takes a drink, and that's when he goes, oh, sangria. And he's all, what does sangria mean? He's all, after he says it's blood. And then Fred's like, oh my gosh. And he's all, no, because of the color. And I love Fred's answer. He's like, oh, I thought it was something from the bullfights. That line, I never, ever get tired of that line. That's why I love this episode. This is one where, if we do, which we will one day on our channel, top quotes, I am definitely hitting up multiple lines in this episode as top quotes. This has some of the best. But that's when, you know, and then he's got these, oh, what's that stuff in there? And he's like, oh, that's like fruits. And he's like, oh, it looks like garbage. And then Lamont, just from that, right? Lamont is almost like a sponge. He can only absorb so much before he's got to go. And he's like, that's it. It's just a small line. He's like, oh, it looks like garbage. And he's all, that's it. You could stay. And Lamont's out. And Fred, let's look at this clip.
Hey, Negro, come here. Yeah. Bring me another picture of that Shangri-La. Hey, look here, waiter. Hold the garbage.
I love that. He's all, waiter, hey, negro. The way he does it, he's all, and hold the garbage. So that's a great, this restaurant scene alone drives the episode up, just like how in the past we've covered okay episodes where they would bump up because of Leroy and Skillet, right? That's one of my favorite times when they come up. This restaurant scene bumps the whole episode up because it's not just here. When I think about this episode, honestly, there's times where after this scene, I might go, hey, what happens next? Because I love the basketball. I love the talking about fishing and the good times he wants to have with Lamont. And then I absolutely treasure the restaurant scene. And then I go, hey, wait, we still got Nelson B. Davis. We got Julio and Lamont traveling. And we got Fred with a date, right? If you didn't have a heart attack, she would have gave you one. So there's so much more to this other than just the restaurant scene. So let's get to that. So now we get the next day. Lamont's, he's ready to go. He's out of here. And he's all, what you want? Whoop, baby, I got it. Whoop. And he's singing. I love when he does that to the door. Opens it. And in comes Nelson B. Davis, who we saw previously on the #1 episode of Season 1. And that is Coffins for Sale. We've actually already done a tournament on that. So yes, it is Red G Fox Channel stamp certified. #1 episode of Season 1 is Coffins for Sale. And if you have another one, you can give your opinion. But majority on our channel did vote for that. But Nelson B. Davis makes a return. So man, talk about 2 for 2 in top rated episodes. And Lamont's like, what are you doing here? And he comes in, and then Fred comes out. I love Fred. Remember, they showed him, I forgot to mention, they showed him earlier, he came out of the kitchen in a wheelchair. Why is he in a wheelchair? And he's totally playing it up. And Lamont saw him, and he's like, what is this? And that's right, before Nelson B. Davis comes in, they did have a conversation where Lamont knows. He's like, you're just doing this. He's like, oh, I had a heart attack in the middle of the night. And he's like, you're just doing this. Oh, man, and lightning strikes. Oh, my gosh. I'm not going to go back. One more. No, I'm not just going to leave it. Forget it. You know the episode. You know it. All I got to say is hepatitis. And you'll remember what part I forgot in the restaurant scene. I love that line. I'll say it when Julio's like, oh, relax, Mr. Sanford. I have had everything here. And Fred's all, have you had hepatitis?
This place is very clean and the food is excellent. I have had everything here. Have you had hepatitis?
Oh, how did I miss that line? Anyways, let's get back to where we're at. I'm sorry, I got off right there because it just struck my brain as soon as I talked about this. But he's there and he's like, I know what you're doing. You say you got a heart attack and you might not make it. Hey, you might not come home. Here's the keys in case I might be up in bed or unable to answer the door. What a load of crap, dude! And nobody believes this. And so then Nelson B. Davis comes in and he wants to sell him burial insurance. Burial insurance. And Lamont's like, oh, really? So it's a big scam. And he's like, okay, I gotta go. Nothing you can do is gonna stop me. And then he tells him, Nelson B. Davis is like, oh, it's a good time to plan. And Fred's like, and he tells him everything. Fred's like, see, the funeral insurance, it'll take care of everything. When I die, I don't have to worry about anything. You're not gonna have to handle nothing. But then he looks at him, he's like, oh, this could wait, couldn't it? He tells Nelson B. Davis, he's like, this could wait after the weekend, right? Lamont's like, come on, this. And then Fred does he leans, let's look at the picture right here. He's like leaning, like he's totally sick. And Nelson B. Davis is all, well, one can only hope so. And he takes off, and that's when Lamont's like, I'm out of here. You do whatever nonsense you want. So we see them, right? They're about less than 45 minutes away, something like that. They're almost to Tijuana, and Julio comes out. And Julio with that hat looks like a village person. That's what's funny. He just looks like a totally different biker guy. That hat changes his whole personality to me, where he looks like he's like someone you would see in a biker bar. So Julio's like, hey man, I've been doing all the talking. You're not doing nothing. And you can see it. Lamont's face is feeling the guilt. And raise your hand in the comments section if you've been on that. My wife has done that to me. My mother has done that to me, where they put a guilt, not intentionally. They just say, hey, yeah, go have a good time. I'll do this. Go have a good time. I'm working or doing that. I can't go. I'm so sorry. I'm sick, but go have a good time. You're like, I can't have a good time because you're putting a guilt trip on me. And Fred really did. He nailed it. And Lamont is feeling it. And he's like, huh? What? Like everything Julio says, yeah. And what? Julio's like, man, I've been doing all the talking, dude. You really want to? And this is where even my son Noah was watching with us, and he's even going, man, Julio's just making it worse. He's making it feel worse because Julio's like, hey, you never know. Maybe that one time. Remember, he's like he could die. But I love that Julio's like, and this is good points. He's like, what they say. Sometimes you feel like they're always going to be there with you, and then one day they're gone. And it's over, and you can't go back. And he's like, yeah, what my old man's been saying that forever. He's like, yeah, but it could happen one day. It's going to. And then he goes, what my old man wanted to do? He wanted to go fishing. And Julio's like, oh man, if I would love to be able to go fishing with my dad. And it's not even meant to be funny, but it's funny because it's so true that Julio lost his father who he loves, and he wishes he can go do these things, and he can't, and Lamont can. So now you're going, Lamont's already feeling guilty, and now you're telling him, hey, you know what, man? I wish I could go fishing with my dad. And so Lamont's like, that's it. He's all, now are you ready to go? Lamont's like, no. We're going. What do you mean, Tijuana? We're going home, man. I got to get home to my sick father. They rush back. They get to the house, and he's all, pop. And he's checking the kitchen, checking upstairs. He can't find him. Julio's like, nah, man, maybe he stepped out for a little bit. And he's like, no. And then he sees the wheelchair. You know what it looks like? Lamont tells him, look, it looks like someone was sitting here, he fell out of the wheelchair, he crawled outside, and now he's reenacted everything. He's paranoid. Now he's got to go get on the phone and call the police. Something happened to his dad. He's thinking the worst case scenario. Then we see Fred walking up. Let's look at this.
Hey,
The fact that Fred's coming up, and he's got this date, and he's got a big bottle of sangria, or flatbull as he calls it, flat ripple. He's all, oh yeah, he's got that in the bag, and he's got his date, and he's ready to go. And then he sees the truck, and he's telling her she's got to go. She is not having that. And we know her. We've seen her before. I should have did a familiar face with her. We'll get to her next time when she's in the episode. The first one of season 3, or when they go to the Gay Blade. She was Bubba's date. So, and Bubba ends up messing her date up too. This poor lady, man, she's like, I ain't ever going out with you again. And she pulls the same thing with Fred, because Fred got her away from another guy who was buying her 4 drinks. And now she's got to start all over again. But she's furious. She's like, no, man, we ain't. And he's like, I got to go. She's not happy. Fred is panicking. Lamont is there. And then they make eye contact. And Fred sees him, and Lamont's like, let's look at the clip.
If you didn't have a heart attack, she'd have gave you one.
I didn't. That is another great line. If you didn't have a heart attack, she'd have gave you one. And Fred's like, oh, son, I did have a heart attack. And he's reenacting it, having the heart attack. And he's like, I'm coming to join you with a fifth of Flapple. And he's all, well, not quite a fifth. And then he starts drinking as Lamont goes back inside. So you see Fred. And I was like, and I'm talking to my son. I'm like, I know it's a hypothetical show. I know, but that's what the channel is where we break it down and say, what the heck? Why would you do this? You make your son feel guilty, but then you make plans to go look for a woman and hook up with her. And you would have had a great time. It's just the weekend. You do your thing, let Lamont do his thing, but instead you ruin it for everybody. So now Lamont's back, and you got caught. And so he goes in the house. It ends, right? It ends. It opens up the next day, and that's when Lamont answers the door, and in comes Nelson B. Davis again, and Lamont knows. He's like, oh, okay. Oh, I'll get my dad. Pop, he's like, I'm not falling for it for a second. And then Julio comes over, and Julio's like, hey, what's going on? And he finds out, I came here to talk to Mr. Sanford about funeral or burial insurance. And he's all, on a beautiful day like today, even Julio knows, what? Why would you do that? And Fred comes down and he's got the robe on again and he's pulling the old, oh man, I don't feel, sorry son. And they both said it, Nelson B. Davis and Fred, they're like, we thought you wouldn't be here. The heck you didn't, you know he'd be there. You wanted him at that time. That's what's so funny. And then he tells them right there, he's like, Dad, you know, Pop, if we forget this, will you go with us? And because I love this part, let's look at Julio right here.
You're asking, man. Remember what I told you?
Hey, Papa, we take you fishing with us. Would you promise to forget about this burial insurance?
See? Julio, man, I love Julio. Great neighbor, forgiving, understanding, and then he's still looking out for Fred. Even all the garbage Fred does to him. He's even convincing Lamont, not only on coming home, but right there he's all, remember what I said? He could die, take him fishing. And he's like, will you go and forget this? He's like, yeah. And then he's like, all right, go change. And he takes it off. He's already got the fishing gear underneath, and he's got the hat. We already seen this, the episode where he tries to surprise him. Or wait, did we see that? Was that Happy Birthday Pop? I think he was dressed like that. I think it was. Or it could have been the one with B.B. King. I think it was Happy Birthday Pop. But he's done that before. But he throws on the hat, and it's over. Lamont's smiling. Julio's smiling. And so they're going to go out fishing together. Another great time. This time I don't think Fred will blow it like at the Mexican restaurant because he's a more familiar situation. But that's it. Yes, I love this episode. Yes, it's one of my top like 35, right? And give or take an episode here and there. But it's inside my top 40 for sure. Definitely one that every time it's on, or if it's on the DVD or I'm passing by in that season, I will give it a stop and watch. Comment below, do you love this one as much as me? Is it in your top 30, in your top 20? What is your favorite line from this episode? And if there was anything you enjoyed, please, to help my channel out, to help it out with on YouTube, give it a like. And if you really enjoy any stuff we give, from trivia to polls to tournaments to shorts to anything, everything Sanford and Son, please give a subscribe and be part of our community here on Red G Fox. Have a great week. Look for more trivia questions and shorts and a few other things, fun things coming up this week. And then possibly a live show this weekend coming up. That is always a blast. I love that personally. I have so much fun with you guys. And then also our Friday, we'll find out what we got. I don't even know. I usually have things planned, but this week I'm trying to keep it open because I keep having ideas popping up. Go check out last week's, The Cops of the Bad Boys of Watts, as we called it. Bad boys, bad boys. All the cops who are mainstays in Sanford and Son, from your favorite to your worst, we rank them all. So, like I said, this channel's got everything, and it's all revolved around Sanford and Son. Have a great time, be safe, and we'll see you next time. Peace.